Today, I wanted to cover Scurv, who I think was pretty heavily impacted by the recent bannings. Hitting NIMBY, I think, kind of fundamentally changed the deck, and I tried to tweak it for today's video, but I noticed that the deck kind of has some kind of glaring issues now with the ban of that card. So to run through the hero text really quickly, you have the ability to tap Scurv, destroy a gold that you control to make a Gold Kiss Rum token. A Gold Kiss Rum token can be used on a future turn to tap your hero and give your next action go again. And then this has a nice little benefit where when you crack the rum, you're going to get a resource. Now, before you could play NIMBY, because NIMBY, you could give go again with the rum, immediately tutor that nimbalism, and then go and then play everything else. The problem is that losing NIMBY means that you kind of lose what the deck really was kind of geared towards doing. You were able to play all the nimbalism cards, including the equipments, and you still have these turns that would kind of compete basically with rune blades in the format. Now with the card leaving, I still wanted to cover Scurv because people have been very excited about this hero. So I need to go back to the drawing board and see what the deck could do well. In terms of the actual card pool, you are really limited what you can play because of the pirate text. A lot of the thief cards only synergize with Treasure Island, which was a macro for limited play in high seas and not something you can play in something like Project Blue. And the pirate cards overall are mainly geared for Gravy Bones and not for Scurv. But we did come up with something today that can do something particularly well. So our equipment overall is very generic. The only benefit is that we get to play Buccaneer's Bounty, which is a huge upgrade over something like Blossom of Spring. This basically gives you the option to block if you would want to. So it sounds like a minor thing, but I think it's actually pretty important. And then what I think is probably the most interesting card in the deck is going to be Light Fingers, which is something that synergizes with you being a thief hero. This deck will play cards that can wager golds or can potentially give gold to your opponent. So cards like Test of Strength or Money Where Your Mouth Is. The cool thing is that if you end up getting unlucky and your opponent gets the gold, if they can't immediately crack it on their turn before attacking you, you can just block with your Light Fingers and then re-steal the gold back. So into aggro redline decks, think of things like Fi or Briar, Azalea, etc. You can kind of guarantee you're probably going to steal that gold token back if for some reason you lose it. And potentially one of the most powerful things about this deck is Sticky Fingers, another card that can immediately steal the gold back. So between all of those, you also have Sticky Fingers available, so if your opponent gets a gold token from one of your effects, you can just use the ally and immediately steal it back from them. This card is very good, being a offhand that you can run in addition to Talishar, which is going to be our weapon for the deck. This is just a 0-card play that sticks an ally on the table and can attack for free every single turn until your opponent clears it. This kind of synergizes well with the rum too, because if there's ever a hand where you wanted to play like a big attack, you can, crack the rum, send the Sticky Fingers for 2 just to convert it for 2 damage before sending something else. Talishar, it curves out with something like Money Where Your Mouth Is, where you can play it and then swing Talishar for 7, wagering a gold off of blue, and overall it's just an efficient 2-card 4. And then we get to the real meat of the deck, which is a bunch of blues and then cards you can pummel. I'd say that the win con of this deck is pummeling Money or Your Life. Money or Your Life is very strong because if your opponent does not have a gold token, which most of the time they should not have one, this has an on hit that they're going to take 4 damage. So this is basically a 3 for 10 if it connects. So when you pummel this, you not only kind of guarantee the on hit going through, you remove a card from your opponent, but then you also pressure that extra 4 damage. And it's kind of the main way the deck can win games. They have a lot of stuff that can support it or other cards that are good in the shell. So we have cards like Battalion Bark. You can just cleanly pitch 2 blues, already be on curve to play pummel, and then this comes in for 9 damage plus the pummel on top. It's just good raw damage. We have Money Your Life, what we talked about, in addition to Test of Strength as ways to get gold. So that way over 2 turns you can turn it into a rum and then use the rum for something else. On the Horizon is good just as a block 4 into aggro, but also you do care a little bit about the top of your deck, because sometimes you can decide to crack the gold if you know what's on top of the deck, or you have cards like Saltwater Swell where you normally would gamble over what the top of your deck is, but now you don't need to. We have 4 copies of Pummel. I think going all the way up to 6 is a little bit egregious. I think the deck will end up having some consistency issues if you have that many pummels in the deck. I think you traditionally want more cards you can pummel over pummels themselves. And then Snatch is here as kind of the only payoff left for the actual rum, so you can just crack the rum and send your Snatch for 4 go again. There's really not a whole lot you can do with the hero power anymore, so this just kind of seemed like the easiest inclusion. We were playing cards like this in the NIMBY version for obvious reasons. And then we have a bunch of blues. These are mainly utility. Some of these just have attack stats, so that way you can win your Test of Strength clash. So some of these cards I don't think you will ever really try to resolve. The benefit though is that these are all pummelable. So if you're ever in a bad spot late game and you have to send, let's say, Brutal Assault and pummel it, you can technically do that and potentially win a game. We have Murderous Rabble, it's a clean 0 for 3 in blue. Saltwater Swell can be really good if you're just going to do some kind of crazy setup turn. And then Sloop is just another card you can convert for damage. You can crack a gold and play it. You can play Saltwater Swell and then play it with Go Again, or you can play it and then pummel it. And then by that point, you'll have 2 blues in your pitch. So that at that point, you will be able to give it Go Again and then potentially play something else. Trot Along is here because it just gives your Sticky Fingers Go Again. You got to think about ways to convert, because if your opponent, let's say, blocks with 2 cards, you pummel it over the top and then your opponent discards something, they're probably just going to arsenal their last card and pass back. So you need to think about what you can do with 4 cards. And then for our sideboard, we have Arcane Barrier, we have Barracuda against ally-based decks, we have Cut Down to Size against aggro, and then we have Polarity against arcane spell decks. And then in a maybe board, I was kind of thinking about Peak because of like what we talked about, where some of these cards kind of care about what the top of your deck is, including in the gold tokens, and maybe just having the additional look at the top of the deck is maybe better than the 2 Life in the Beckoner. Not quite sure. We'll jump into some gameplay, that way you can see how the deck tries to function with the NIMBY ban. Here we have a game going into Briar. We're going second, which in my opinion, I think is probably the ideal spot to be in. My opponent is going to get a very good setup though, playing a Malefic and then also generating a Lightning Embodiment. So we need to have a very impressive turn going second. Unfortunately, our hand is missing some cards like Pummel. We just have the Cut Down to Size, although we are glad to have this here. It'll at least demand 1 card blocked from our opponent. We get the 1 card block from them. It actually ends up being Burn Up Shock, which is pretty important. So I'm definitely glad that we have some tech like this in aggro decks, or else we would have just taken 5 extra damage probably during their turn. We'll go ahead and arsenal the Money or Your Life. So my opponent opens up with a Lightning Surge. We're just going to say no blocks on this. We kind of need to wait for some better on hits. I do expect some to come, and my opponent goes ahead and plays Discharge. We're going to go ahead and take the Arcane here. This will come in for 7. They show Lightning Press off the top of the deck, so that's important for us to know for next turn. I guess we'll go ahead and just block for 6. If their last card is something like Snatch, we'll unfortunately just have to give up the Money or Your Life plus some blocking equipment, but that's the spot that we're in. It's just second strike, so I think we're going to risk taking the damage here. We're going to go to 10 though, which is a little bit scary, but if we can cycle this into Arsenal, we can potentially get a little bit lucky. Then sending 3 here is pretty bad. We'll at least get to use the helm though. But the problem is that they still have all of their equipment up. So I don't even feel like this will even connect. They can just give 1 card, and then we know about a Lightning Press. They could play something like Snatch, and then we're stuck in a bad position where we can't actually really adequately answer it. My opponent blocks for 3. I guess we'll have to see if it's something like Sigil. It is Sigil. The question is, do we want to take the damage or do we want to arsenal the Money or Your Life? I think I'm fine just taking the damage. They're covering an exact block anyways, so it's not like it really matters. We're going to go and put this in Arsenal, and then we're going to see how bad their hand is. Okay, so we know that the other card in hand is the Lightning Press, so I think we're just going to go ahead and overblock like this, specifically blocking, that way we can get the life portion out of this. This will at least bluff Pummel, so it's something my opponent has to potentially consider. I don't really know if it'll make them take a different line, considering that they're at 17 and we are at 9. We're getting the illusion of a close game here with them taking all 9 of it. If we had a Pummel, at least would have been pretty good. We would have ripped something and potentially gotten like 4 value out of the Pummel, like taking an aggressive card. But we really don't have a way to win here, to be honest. We know about the Lightning Press, which means that as soon as they play, any card with an on hit like Snatch, like we're kind of in a lose-lose position. So they're going to play Static Shock. So if that is the case, I guess it makes sense to preserve as much of our life total as possible. We'll go ahead and we'll AB everything here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and block for 7. We end up losing the Clash, which is pretty hilarious. So it's not good for us. My opponent is going to hold the Lightning Press and pass. We now know the top of the deck is Pummel. It doesn't really help us out here. Once again, my opponent can give 1 card and stop the Money or Your Life trigger, which is not good for us. This does technically present lethal, but it's kind of fake lethal because my opponent literally has cards on board that stop it. So, all right, we get a block for 5 here. No surprises. We still know about that Lightning Press, which is making things kind of difficult on our end. This hand is absolutely game losing. It's incredibly hilarious. This is also the turn that my opponent pushes. We'll take the damage. If they have something like Second Strike, we get blown out instantly. It's Flittering Charge, but unfortunately we do know about the Lightning Press. It's actually very marginal, but I guess we should hold on to the Money or where your mouth is, because this could actually be a 2-card hand, since on a future hand where we would use Talishar, we can at least... Oh man, okay, this is insane. Okay, yeah, we just get blown out. So they're gonna get a card draw. We're gonna take, what, 4? We go to 1. We're just gonna send Sticky Fingers. I mean, I have absolutely no idea how we ever would get back in this game. My opponent has access to 5 cards. We do get to steal the gold back, which is pretty good, but I have no idea how my opponent would ever break in this position. We'll go ahead AB here, and then we'll go ahead and block for 3. We're gonna send Scar. We actually die because of the Puddin context, which is pretty hilarious. You probably could have considered cutting the card, because it just doesn't block here. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I don't think it really would have mattered. Looking at their hand too, also we would have accidentally probably walked in to lethal, just sending the Sticky Fingers. So we're playing into Dori here. Unfortunately for her, she walks into us, potentially dumping everything here. This sounds really bad, but I may end up doing this just because I need to clear these cards out of my hand when I'm going second. We reveal Pummel, so no gold, unfortunately. She sets up an E-Pot though. Bad news for us. What are we doing on our turn? Our turn unfortunately got completely shut down by the fact that we drew Bark with no second blue. So we could have pummeled this on curve, but we drew a yellow. So it's not going to happen. We'll see if my opponent wants to fully commit to play around a pummel. They play Scar for a Scar. That's crazy. We're going to go ahead and take that. Really no point in blocking cards on that. And then when they send Dawnblade, I guess we'll consider putting some stuff in front of it. I'm trying to think about an efficient 1-card hand from us. I don't really exactly know what that would look like. We can just keep on blocking out. So they're going to send the Dawnblade. This comes in for 6. I'm going to go ahead and just match them here with a block for 6. If they push it over, it's fine. This doesn't have go again. If they do decide to push it over, give it the go again with the refraction bolters. We can just stick armor in front or a card plus armor and then play the Money of Your Life from Arsenal. So they use the E-Pot, okay, to play Out for Blood. So then this will come in for 4. I'm not going to risk running into a reprise effect here, so I'm just going to put these in front and then see what the last card is. If it was something like Iron Song Response, we kind of walk into it for no reason, so I might as well just give these anyway. We get a full 6 block from our opponent. That's kind of good. I kind of want to slow down the game a little bit here. We have a pretty good hand. Unfortunately, it just doesn't really amount to anything if my opponent pushes over here. Ideally, I would like to play the Money of Your Life and then go ahead and pummel it. I mean, this is looking like it could work out for us if we block for 4 here. We somehow reveal another non-attack, so both test of strengths are going to whiff into Dori. We'll go ahead and play Money of Your Life. I'm kind of hoping my opponent will not play around pummel here. They're only just going to block for 2, so we may get a little bit lucky. Play Take It on the Chin to at least prevent a little bit more of it, but now they're kind of making redundant agility tokens. We'll have the pummel trigger in addition to the 2 Money or Your Life triggers as well. So this definitely feels like a good spot to be in. And they discard Iron Song Response. That's good for us to know, so we can potentially play around that. I am probably just going to opt to say no blocks here. They'll probably end up getting a Dawnblade counter, which is like a little bit unfortunate, but we are at 13. So it actually turns out it was not that. They're going to open up a Snatch. I think, unfortunately, we do have to block this. And then I guess we'll see what their follow-up here is. So it's going to be Dawnblade. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and preserve the life here. And then we're just going to go ahead and send the Talishar back. I think the main goal here is we want to be able to have enough health to say no blocks for a turn and then go ahead and just pummel something to close the game out. So we get a block from my opponent. That's good for us because they weren't really officially covering it, but then also that is just less damage that they can throw at us. They're going to send 4. We're going to say no blocks on this. We're going to play Hidden Run. We're going to go ahead and say no blocks on the Dawnblade here. And then we kind of have to think about if we want to play the Puddin context on this. I think we want to. It'll force some kind of a reaction from their end. They're going to puncture it, but at least all the damage is now face up. We go to 5. We know that there's no way for them to win the game off of this. So if that is the case, I'm just going to take the damage here. We're going to go to 2, and then we'll play the Money of Your Life. My opponent has to block with every single card in their hand if they want to not lose the game here. Only block for 6. We'll push the pummel over and see if that's enough to get the game. They play Take It on the Chin, but if they don't have another prevention, we do get there. Looks like we did get there because we'll have them discard first, and then we'll have the 2 on hit triggers.